Hello and welcome back to the Hornby Dublo Railway. Today we're concentrating on the larger diesels. Here we have Coco, a Deltic of sorts, and over here in a new addition to the railway, this little siding here, we have a Kobo, and you can see that the Way and Works department has been busy up here. Now the primary focus is not actually on these two engines, although they will be taken out for servicing, but it is on the motors that drive these, because we're going to be looking at a motor that was completely seized up and is now in operation. Okay, well, let's get into it. So here we are in the office with two essentially intact three-rail Hornby Dublo diesels. The Coco, sometimes referred to as a Deltic, and the Kobo. Now these have come off the layout for maintenance, and I think the first thing to comment on is the overall similarity in their length. The Deltic, to be true to scale, would probably be a couple of inches longer, but it sits on the same chassis as the Kobo. Now, if we turn these over, we'll see a couple of differences. Obviously, a six-wheel bogie and a four-wheel bogie. The pickups are different, but I think that you can see, hopefully, that the fixings are very similar, and what you can see of the chassis in there is pretty similar. This is a fairly late three-rail Coco, and these side frames are plastic and they just pull off fairly easily. The side frames on this are metal and they unscrew. The couplings on these two models are fixed with a bolt and a hexagonal nut. On other versions, this is done with a brass rivet. I think that this is superior because obviously I can replace things like this fairly easily. What else is there to see? Well, they're probably in need of a bit of maintenance. They've both been running on the layout for quite some time, so there's a tyre missing there. The wheels could do with a bit of cleaning, so could the pickups. The next stage of this exploration is to have a look at a disassembled one of these, with a disassembled motor and with a working motor. So I'm going to go through how these things are put together underneath the body, and take you through the saga of getting a motor going in for one of these. It was for a Coco that was sold to me. I'll tell you the story as I do it, but it was an unsatisfactory purchase. Let's just leave it at that. And the other day, after staring at it for years, I resolved to see if I could get the thing going, and it looks like I've been successful anyway as far as the motor goes. The trailing bogie is another story, but we'll come to that. Okay, so the next thing you'll see is a whole pile of parts, and I'll talk you through those. Okay, so as threatened, here's the innards of a couple of Hornby Dublo two bogie diesels. This is what you would expect to see if you took apart a cocoa diesel. It would have a set of side frames. Just checking to see which ones I've got here. Actually, these are off a Kobo, but it would have a set of side frames that sort of sits on there and is screwed in. On this motor, you can see the side frames as well. That's actually for a Coco. This is for a Kobo, and you can see that they're a different length, they're a different geometry altogether, but they attach in the same way. And so basically, the underpinnings of these two engines are the same, save for the rear bogie on a Kobo being a twin axle bogie rather than a 3-axle one. Okay, so the chassis is just this bent piece of steel that fixes to the top of the motor unit and the top of the trailing bogie. As you saw previously, the pickups are situated on the trailing bogie. That's true for both the Coco and the Kobo, again, as you saw. Now, when you drop this out of the engine, I'll just put some light on this. What you see is this sort of hollow interior, and this is pretty much for both of them. There's some glazing in each end and a single fixing here. This is the Kobo. Coco is pretty much the same. Now, what brought me to all of this? Well, some years ago now, I purchased a Kobo, a 3-rail Kobo, in good going condition according to the description on eBay, and when it arrived, it didn't go. The mechanism appeared to be jammed. This is actually the mechanism here, which is now working, and I'd just like to talk through what I did to get this going, but I will spoil the surprise. The problem was that this axle and this axle were completely jammed solid. I've never come across that before. I've come across axles being pretty stiff because of oil, but I could not pry this into motion with even a spanner, putting a spanner on it. But I didn't know that that was the problem to start with, and it wasn't the only problem. As it turned out, this was missing a brush. Now, I've got the top of the motor here. The brush fits in there and in there, and it has a holder like this at one end and a threaded nut that holds the washer in there. What you see at the top here is the bearing, the housing for the armature, and the brushes come in here and make contact with the armature, which is here. This is the ringfield magnet. So anyway, once I'd figured out that there was no power going across this, I checked, and indeed there was a brush missing, so that was an easy fix. And what should happen is basically the armature should spin like this, and I think you can see the gears going around there. Now, what was happening was the armature could move about that much, and it would just meet absolute resistance. And so my thinking was that there was something wrong with the gears. So I took the drive out, which is it's not that difficult to do. You loosen off this, take off the sidebar, and you've got enough room to maneuver in and out of here. And the other thing about this, which I don't know if you can see, is that there are a couple of I'll just shine some light on it, maybe, if I can. There are a couple of little locking screws on this gear. The same is true at the bottom of the armature, and so you can unscrew those. You can move that back, and once I'd done that, I discovered that I still had a problem. Moving this worm drive. Out that came, and I was left with pretty much the bottom of the motor here, side frames off, this drive shaft out, and turning it over, I was unable to move these wheels. They were locked solid. My first thought was that maybe they had been taken off and put back on, and they were just on too tightly. But I could see a little bit of light, and so eventually what I settled on doing was putting some penetrating oil on them and leaving them for a while, and I got some movement out of this one, and eventually got some movement out of this one. Reassembled everything, and this is now a working 3-rail motor unit, which I can put in a Kobo or a Coco. I think because the other problem with the Kobo that was sold to me was that one of these had broken off, so I can't screw the rear side frame on adequately, and this also turns out to be a 2-rail trailing bogie. So the purchase was altogether completely unsatisfactory, and it's I think, and this would be the only time in hundreds of purchases that I've made that I could say there either has to be an element of dishonesty there, or negligence on a scale that is kind of unimaginable, because if you say the thing is going, presumably you've tested it. Anyway, the thing is going now, and it'll be running around the layout at some point. So this is basically the mechanism that runs these things, and it's fairly bulletproof. This armature I don't think is in great shape. This is from my spares, and I cannibalized this to get the necessary parts for this, the brush and the spring for it and so forth. Anyway, all assembled. This goes on, sorry, the magnet goes in like that. This goes on the top, and this little bit of wiring and maybe what looks like a suppressor goes on the back, and everything, as you can see, is wired with some fairly flimsy wiring down to the pickups here. So that's the saga of this purchase, and it's got to have taken me at least, I don't even think I was living in this house when I bought this thing, so it could be more than 5 years to get around to doing something with this. Anyway, I'm pleased that I bit the bullet. This is now running really, really well. When I took it apart, I did take the top off it, which meant that I I could potentially have removed the magnet. I didn't. I left the magnet sitting like this, so it's this still runs with reasonable power. It may have to be remagnetized at some stage. And the other thing, I guess, as I've got all this apart and I'm talking about this, is I have one of these with a neomagnet in it, and what you see is how you replace it. You basically undo the 4 screws at the top of the housing here, lift that off, take this out, put the new magnet in, screw it all back together, and everything should work. One more thing before I finish. This is a genuine 3-rail motor bogie. I know that because when I apply power here, and here, when I apply positive and negative, I get a short circuit. There's a connection there. This I know is a genuine 2-rail bogie, because when I do the same here, there isn't a connection, and there's insulation on these wheels. I think that's about it for this. I've said everything I want to. Another reason for doing this, and I don't know if he'll watch as far as this, but when I made my first video for this channel, I featured Kobos, and a friend of mine left me a message saying it would be nice to have a look at the inside of them. Well, there we are. We've had a look at the inside of them, and so we'll conclude this video with actually the two engines you saw earlier. Even though they need a service, we'll conclude with them running around the layout. And I hope you found this interesting. It's I guess it's a happy ending. I'm just fortunate that I've got the spare parts, and I can do something with what would otherwise have been an expensive and unfortunate experience. Anyway, next thing you'll see is a couple of these running on the layout.